There were zombies roaring downstairs. My mother and I were tied together at home. We watched the so-called friends digging out all the food they had stored, and their faces were full of disgust. That's all. It's only enough for 1 or 2 months, right? I'm afraid it won't be enough for a month if I take them with me. Liu Jingjing glanced at her burly boyfriend, who understood and came over with a knife. They wanted to kill us. 1. Xianhua, I forgot to tell you that my family didn't have much food. We killed some of the things that were wasting food in the building and survived for more than a month. In the early morning, I woke up from my sleep, and the pain of the knife tearing my body seemed to still remain. But when I opened my eyes, there was no wolf-hearted man and woman in front of me. I thought of something and immediately took out my phone to check. X month 9. This is 15 days before the end of the world. I couldn't believe it. I was reborn. I ran to my mother's bedroom like crazy and hugged her excitedly. My mother was startled by the awakening and asked me hurriedly, "Nono, what's wrong? What happened?" I hurriedly comforted my mother, "It's okay, just I had a nightmare." I cried as I said that. After the Doomsday, our family lived a relatively comfortable life. And this was all because of my mother who had suffered for half her life. The father at that time was a gambler, owed a lot of debts and was violent. After my mother divorced that man with my brother and me, she was chased by loan sharks to collect debts, blocked the keyhole, smashed the door in the middle of the night, and threw dead cats and dogs into the house. Various means forced the family to move constantly. Because of these experiences, my mother attaches great importance to safety to the point of being almost neurotic. My family lives on the top floor, the 24th floor. The glass and security doors in the house are all explosion-proof, and the house has been covered with expensive sound insulation cotton. My mother even has the habit of hoarding food at home. The original intention was just to prevent loan sharks from finding us and blocking us at home one day, but these preparations helped us survive a long time in the world of zombies that eat people. If I hadn't been so confused that I opened the door and let Liu Jingjing in. I cried so hard that my mother couldn't help laughing and crying, and she felt distressed. "How old are you, and you are still afraid of dreams?" "It's because of the pressure at work. You have to take a break occasionally." I nodded. "It's time to take a vacation. We also have to prepare for the end of the world." After returning from my mother's room, I found a pen and paper to make a list of the materials I needed to prepare, and sent a message to my brother to ask him to call me back when he woke up tomorrow morning. But my brother Xiao Yang called me back immediately. "Listen to me. Sister, listen to me." We both spoke almost at the same time, and I realized something. After a short silence, we said 5 words at the same time. "The end of the world is coming." My brother was also reborn. Is it because of the twins? I don't know. According to him, he didn't have time to go home before his rebirth, so he could only hide in the apartment. But he was a homebody, and the neighbors all knew that he had food. A few days after the end of the world, he was rushed in by the property management and several big men to rob his food, and he was thrown into the zombie pile. But after hearing my experience, he couldn't help but jump up and down in anger over the phone. "Sister. My dear sister. If you have to die in the end of the world, die first. Remember, we can only save ourselves. I have experienced the lesson myself, so how could I not know this truth? Let's not talk about it for now. You come back quickly, let's stock up on supplies together, and our home will be much safer." Before I died, I experienced 6 zombies knocking on the door of my house but couldn't open it. "I will be back tomorrow. I will transfer the money first. Sister, you take it to buy supplies. Remember, don't be seen by others, otherwise you will be remembered like me." I agreed and began to plan the plan of smuggling supplies. The next day, I sat in front of my mother and told her directly about zombies and the apocalypse. She would definitely not believe it, not to mention that there was no news about zombies now, but I could say it in a different way. I made up a story, saying that I had offended someone at work, and the other party was not clean and I was afraid of retaliation, so the company gave me a day off, and we had to buy some things to hide at home. When my mother heard the word revenge, she immediately became nervous. "Do you want to go out? We have a lot of things at home, we can just stay at home." As she said that, my mother dragged me to see the supplies at home. Of course, I knew that there were a lot of things at home. When the apocalypse began, even I was shocked by my mother's hoarding of food, but these were far from enough to deal with the apocalypse. But there was another question. "Mom, do our neighbors know that you have stored so much food?" My mother was stunned. "After you taught me to shop online, I bought things delivered to my door." As for the neighbors, I was startled. Thinking of Xiaoya's situation, I felt that even neighbors, including the property management, had to be guarded against. Wasn't my brother's door opened by the property management staff? "Mom, I don't think it's safe enough. Starting today, let's not turn on the lights at night, so that they think there's no one at home." This trick was taught to me by my mother. In the past, loan sharks bribed neighbors to monitor us, and our family had to learn to deal with it. As expected, my mother agreed, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I have to go to the company to ask for leave today, but asking for leave is secondary. The main purpose is to confuse Liu Jingjing, at least to prevent her from thinking about my house after the end of the world. Before leaving, I didn't forget to go to the property management, and under the pretext of paying the property management fee, in advance, pretended to accidentally reveal that our family would move to my brother's place in the next 2 days and rent out the house here. By the way, under the pretext of renovating the rental house, I asked the property management for a universal elevator card. The people in the property management knew that I was going to move out and rent it out, and they suggested that I make a note in the owner group. This is the effect I want. I know that when the end of the world comes, they will count everyone's supplies. At that time, the best way is to quietly disappear in the crowd and not speak. And I have to be justified not to speak. What's scary in the end of the world is not only zombies, but also human hearts. But I remembered another thing. So I told the property management that I saw a man with a knife in building 11 where Liu Jingjing lived, and I often saw a muscular man wandering around. It felt a bit dangerous, so it would be better to notify the residents. I don't know how much these words will have an effect, but it's better to prevent the whole building from being killed by Liu Jingjing and her boyfriend. On the other hand, I don't want this couple to survive so smoothly for a month in the end of the world. I saw a notice from the property management while walking on the road. It didn't mention me, but it reminded the residents there to pay attention to safety. I also saw a resident saying that he wanted to change to a better anti-theft door or something like that. I was very satisfied. When I asked for leave from the company, I ran into Liu Jingjing as expected and repeated what I said at the property management. Liu Jingjing didn't doubt it and even said hypocritically that it was a pity that we couldn't live in the same community. I just felt disgusted and shuddered. After leaving the company, I breathed a sigh of relief, and then I would start to stock up. I bought a house, and I don't have much savings left, but with my brother's money, I still have 400,000 yuan. It's too bad for a single brother and sister to work for 5 years and not be able to save money. But before that, we have to prepare for the Doomsday energy. There are solar panels at home. The community is on the edge of the university town. After all, it has not been completed yet, and the surrounding area is not very prosperous. At the beginning, the property management was not good, and the water and electricity were cut off for some days. In order to stabilize the power supply and save future electricity bills, I installed solar panels on the roof. Because the home is basically all electrical appliances, I immediately placed an order to buy more than a dozen large batteries, and also bought a treadmill generator just in case, and asked for the next day delivery, and delivered to the corridor on the 19th floor. Downstairs. Because I usually get off work late, often until dark, I can be sure that only the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, 10th, 14th, and 15th floors of our unit are occupied. The occupancy rate here is really not high before the university town and infrastructure are built. Then I ordered toilet paper, sanitary napkins, hot packs, and ice cold patches, which are daily necessities that are easy to consume. The basic unit starts at 400. There is also water. There are many people in my family, so I just buy 700 barrels. As for food, I am in the food industry and I am familiar with food wholesale. For self-heating hot pot, self-heating rice, instant noodles, fruits, or canned meat, which have a long storage time, I choose to order directly online, and 100 boxes of each will be delivered to the fake address. The rest will go directly to the wholesale market. Rice, flour, and oil are the big ones. Rice and flour start at 700 kilograms, and then there are boxes of vegetables and fruits. Considering that some are perishable and difficult to store, I buy no more than 60 boxes of each. For pumpkin, winter melon, beans, radish, etc., which are relatively easy to store, the more the better. In addition, I also ordered a large amount of seasonings, and I will pick up fresh meat and sausages and bacon tomorrow. For such a large business, the boss happily collected the money. Seeing that I was a stranger, he hinted that he could give me a discount and asked me to take care of each other's business in the future. So I smiled and said that it was okay. After one trip, the money was spent like water. The next step was to move the things home in a hidden way. Fortunately, my brother only lived on the other side of the city and came back quickly. We asked the truck to deliver the things to the neighborhood, and my sister and I drove the rented Wuling Hongguang to move the things home in trips. When I got home, I realized how capable Xia Yang was. As soon as he got home, he bought seeds and soil, and planned to grow vegetables in the Doomsday. He also told me that he secretly broke the surveillance on the first floor and the elevator. I didn't even think about this problem. Although it is immoral, it is very useful for our survival in the Doomsday. This community is not perfect to begin with. The last time the surveillance was broken, they spent a whole month dawdling. This time, at least don't think they will fix it before the Doomsday. I praised him for his ability and promised to take him to a barbecue before the Doomsday. But the surprises were far more than that. My younger brother also took out the rest of his savings, which was a number that made me jealous. He usually played games and became a streamer to buy equipment, but I didn't expect to save so much money. But I was more relieved. At least I didn't have to worry about my younger brother's ability to make a living. In addition, we had more funds for our Doomsday stockpiling. I took out my list and checked the gaps with my younger brother. There was basically no problem with the food reserves. I also added that I would put a one-way anti-peep film on the house. And buy blackout curtains. My younger brother suggested that I buy 2 layers of curtains. Just in case. I readily agreed. Join the procurement plan. Xiao Yang was responsible for purchasing the self-defense items, and I was only responsible for the preparation of food. We split into 2 groups to prepare the supplies as quickly as possible. At night, our house still didn't turn on the lights. We drew the curtains tightly and only used a small table lamp with a low brightness to move around the room. We first filled a room with the supplies we bought today and locked the door. We spared no effort to fake the illusion that we were not at home. 2 at dawn on the 2nd day, not counting today, there are still 13 days to the end of the world. Xiao Yang. And I went out early in the morning. The security guard at the door didn't even bother to look at us. He lay on the table and continued to sleep. My sister and I looked at each other and went our separate ways. I went to the electronics mall to buy 2 large freezers and asked them to deliver them to my home. The old freezers at home were too small and not enough. Then I loaded the meat products that I had ordered yesterday. I bought nearly 100 kilograms of fresh chicken, pork, mutton, and beef. I bought more than 300 kilograms of smoked and marinated meat in one go. I made too much movement in the past 2 days. I was afraid that if I transported a large truck back, it would attract attention, so I said hello to the boss and transported it myself. The wholesale market is located in a remote location. When I got home, the freezer at home had been installed. I hurried to put all the meat and some fruits and vegetables in. After a busy morning, the 3 freezers and refrigerators at home were full and even had some left over. My mother didn't understand why I bought so many things. This is enough for us to eat for a few years, right? We've only just finished what we did. I held my mother and comforted her to stay at home and not let others know that we were hoarding things. I don't know what my mother thought of. Her expression was very serious. She said she would definitely not let others know. After waiting for a while, Xia Yang also came back. This kid really lived up to my expectations. He bought 20 knives of different sizes and a lot of anti-wolf products for single women. Anti-peep film, thick blackout curtains. He also bought 2 drones, dozens of pinhole cameras, and 3 telescopes, one of which has night vision function. In addition, there are some wires. I nervously asked him if he was seen by others. After all, it was already time for many people to get off work at noon. Xiao Yang said that he only met 2 or 3 people, but he pretended to be a decorator and asked them for directions. It shouldn't be suspected. In the afternoon, the daily necessities I ordered were due to arrive, so we temporarily gave up our plans to go out. We would first bring the supplies up from the 19th floor little by little. I was still worried about bringing the things up. No, there are also safe passages and elevators, zombies and people can come up. I made a note to buy door blockers, chains and big locks. Xiao Yao came over to take a look and remained silent. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and while everyone was at work or school, we hurried to put up anti-peep film and change curtains. Xiao Yang also installed pinhole cameras near the windows, 1 in each of the 4 directions, and with night vision function, so that we can monitor the situation outside the community. He went out and installed surveillance cameras in the corridor from the 5th floor to our 24th floor, which were solar-powered. Why install so many? And there are many people living below the 15th floor. Xiao Yang curled his lips. Of course I know. I also know that there are people in 2 households on the 15th floor, but it is necessary to monitor people. In this way, we will know what happens to them and prepare in advance. Although the network will be disconnected sooner or later, if there is any accident before that, we can also know in advance. This is proof, and it does work. But what he said also gave me inspiration. Later, after finishing these, Xiao Yao was going to start live broadcasting games. Fortunately, he didn't show his face, so I didn't care about him. I quickly disguised myself and slipped out of the community before it got dark. There will be other purchases later, but now I want to buy some small things. This trip I bought carpets, spring couplets, and various shoes. Xiao Yang didn't understand, so I told him to find an opportunity to put it in front of some empty rooms downstairs in a few days to pretend that there are people to cover us. Today, we have stored meat and made disguises. Go to bed early, recharge your energy, and prepare for tomorrow's activities. On the 3rd day, there are still 12 days to the end of the world. Because the stockpiled staple food is enough, and there is still time, Xiao Yang and I decided to go to large supermarkets a few more times to buy the remaining food and snacks. In addition, my mother and I sorted out some useless and space-consuming box packaging and garbage from the supplies bought at home. Bring the big bags of snacks up, and then calculate the time to pretend to carry the boxes downstairs and drive away. When we were moving the boxes out, we really ran into a few neighbors. We used our actions to create the illusion that our family was moving. The power of 2 young people together should not be underestimated. The large comprehensive supermarket closest to our community. Most of the food in the food area and the snack area were almost emptied by us. In the middle, we changed our outfits several times. The most purchased one time, Xiao Yang also bought some party toys on purpose. When checking out, he kept talking to me about how to hold a birthday party, and the salesperson also congratulated him on his birthday in advance. Xiao Yang felt embarrassed instead, and instead hinted to the other party that the epidemic was serious, and it would be better to stock up some food at home. After returning home, we stored dried fruits and vegetables, canned food, compressed biscuits, and other foods in case of emergency. The rest of the food that is not easy to store was placed outside for immediate use. More than half of the space in the 3-bedroom, 2-living-room house was occupied by supplies. But I think there is still room for further filling. But it was already late, so we could only wait until tomorrow. Seeing that we were busy all day and too tired, my mother stewed a big pot of old hen soup for us. As I was eating, I suddenly remembered that no matter how much meat we have, we will eat it all. We still need to supplement it, and it is best to raise some chickens and ducks that lay eggs. I told Xiao Yao and my mother about my idea. My mother was stunned for a while and asked, "Can we raise chickens at home? How big is the smell?" Xiao Yang thought about it, and suddenly asked, "Do you think small pet chickens and ducks are okay?" My eyes lit up. I can immediately search for pet chickens or ducks that can lay eggs. Raw dinner and call duck. They are both very quiet and suitable for raising. In this way, we can eat fresh eggs in the end of the world. 11 days to the end of the world. We went to the pet breeding base and bought a dozen Rudin chicken seedlings and an ugly discounted call duck seedling. We also bought a lot of feed and created a living space for them at home. As time got closer, I started to panic. I sorted out the supplies again and ordered many boxes of snacks and supplies online. Considering the temperature changes in the future, I was afraid that I would not be able to use air conditioning in the future. I also bought some down jackets, fleece blankets and cloaks, and warm sleeping bags. After thinking about it, I added 6 more military coats. I looked at the remaining money in my hand and found that it was enough. I also bought a silent electric fan, an electric blanket, and a rechargeable hot water bottle. Xiao Yao saw my shopping list and went to the wholesale market with me without stopping. The 3 of us bought hundreds of pieces of all kinds of clothes from inside to outside. The space at home is smaller, but for us, as long as there is enough space to sleep, it is enough. The weather is still hot now, but it will be cold in a few days. If there is no heating and air conditioning, I don't know what to do. I was planning when I suddenly remembered something terrible. I actually forgot to buy medicine. I was just trying to hurry up and tell Xia Yang about this. My mother suddenly grabbed my hand and asked me what was going on and why I had to buy so many things. Seeing that I had hoarded things to this extent, she thought it was unbelievable. I had to tell it, so my brother and I told my mother the truth. Hearing about our experiences before rebirth, my mother cried non-stop. She may not know what zombies are, but the fact that her 2 children were killed in the end of the world is enough to make her tears dry. We hugged our mother to comfort her. We have made so many preparations. This time we will definitely live safely until the end of this end of the world. My mother wiped away her tears and asked me if she could help. I thought about it and decided to let my mother stay at home. Sort out the things at home, and then throw away some garbage that takes up space if possible, so as not to take up space. My mother agreed immediately. When the next day came, there were still 10 days before the end of the world. Buy as many medicines as possible. In addition, we continued to go to some supermarkets to buy things, whether it was food or water, and we stocked up a lot. In the next few days, we still did not stop shopping. But we were very careful to avoid the residents around us. Those things ordered online were also quickly moved back home. In addition to food, we also bought a lot of books, including some electronic devices, as well as USB flash drives and mobile hard drives. All the TV series, movies, and variety shows with good reviews were downloaded. To avoid us getting bored at home. The end of the world also solves the problem of excretion, so we bought a lot of cat litter to use. When it was only 3 days before the end of the world, the space at home had become very small, leaving us only half a bedroom to live in. Then there were several narrow aisles in the material room for us to pass through. There were relatively fewer things in the living room, because we also had to monitor the situation in the community from here, and the running generator was also placed here. But fortunately, we were in the building closest to the corner. In this way, we only need to monitor the 2 buildings to the south and west and the direction of the community center. During this time, I also tried to post anonymously and made up some stories about being trapped at home due to the epidemic quarantine. I suggested that everyone should stock up some things at home. Xiao Yang also hinted in the live broadcast that we should stock up more things to be prepared during the epidemic. But we don't know how many people we can help. On this day, we finally stopped the shopping. The family went out to eat a hot pot to relax their appetite. In the evening, we packed a large portion of barbecue, fried chicken and cola to go home. When we came back, we hid from people all the way. My mother smiled and said that she felt like an agent. When I got home, I checked the information on my mobile phone again and found a post saying that someone had bitten someone, but the post only attributed the incident to rabies. There was no follow-up after that. I had already smelled the breath of danger. We didn't plan to go out for the last 2 days. The little things I bought came in handy. We made some disguises on the 17th, 19th and 22nd floors, as well as the door opposite our house. Some put up Spring Festival couplets, and some put shoes and carpets at the door. He wiped their doors clean to make it look like someone was there. Instead, he took off the carpet at the door of his own house. He sprinkled fine dust on the door and the door. He made his house look like no one was living there. In addition, in order to block the safe passage, we locked the doors from the 16th floor all the way to the top floor. Each floor had iron chains and several large locks to lock the doors. Even the rooftop was sealed. At least 2 door blockers were placed on each door. Xiao Yang didn't know where he got a lot of copper bells from. All tied to the chain. The wind can't blow it away. It will only jingle when someone wants to demolish it by force. If someone wants to demolish it by force all the way, then please save your life first. Originally, Xiao Yang wanted to start locking from the 1st floor. But considering that the neighbors downstairs might not have food, if they don't lock the door, they still have a chance to go down to find food. My last bit of kindness still prevented me from doing this. But I still put some chains and iron locks with matching keys behind the security door on each floor. If they find it and need it, just lock it with this. However, in this way, plus the spare quota we originally bought, there are still a lot of iron chains and locks and some door blockers left. Xiao Yang thought about it, and the next morning, he took a bag and went out with these things. I was a little nervous because tomorrow is the time when zombies will break out. After all, it spreads like a virus. I'm a little afraid that they will spread here in advance. Fortunately, my brother came back safely. He said that he bought some more locks and then disguised himself to sneak into the units of several other buildings. He locked a few doors and then put the rest behind the door in the same way. On the one hand, it can increase the survival rate of people in the community. On the other hand, it can also achieve the purpose of concealing others. But I didn't put it in the building opposite where the person who killed my sister died. Xiao Yang said, if one of these bastards dies, we'll be safer. My mother also agreed. Don't worry, we've been preparing for so long this time. We'll stop the elevator later. No one will find us this time. Our family hugged each other, quietly waiting for the nightmare to come tomorrow. 3 early the next morning, my mother woke up. I woke up quickly too, took out the frozen shrimps, and planned to make shrimp porridge early in the morning. Mix the large pieces of shrimps into the porridge and add the green vegetables to cook a pot, which is nutritious and delicious. The real outbreak here was around 12 o'clock in the morning. But in fact, it had already broken out in the city center at 11 o'clock at the beginning. Each shrimp, Xia Yang and I stopped my mother in the inner position. When the zombies came, it was too bloody and disgusting. We still didn't want my mother to see it. At the same time, I kept swiping my phone. In the owner group, the residents of our building were furious, saying that the elevator broke down early in the morning. The property management delayed the repair as expected, saying that the surveillance was broken and they didn't know how the elevator broke down. They would arrange for repairs in the near future. The users on the 14th and 15th floors were fine. Although they didn't know why, they didn't say much. Only the 10th floor was cursing in the group. I watched it silently for a while and then turned it off. In the end times, it's more important to save your life. I turned around and watched the news. I found that around 7 o'clock in the morning, some coastal areas and some other cities had already reported rabies. And some foreign reports seemed to be earlier, a few weeks ago. But most of them were suppressed. I'm afraid it was a virus from abroad. This should have been a normal day. A young pregnant woman was shopping with her lover's hand. As they were walking, a young man in front of them who was walking slowly suddenly stopped. The pregnant woman was feeling strange. Suddenly, the young man rushed out like an arrow. He held down the passerby and rushed forward to bite him. Some people around screamed and some retreated. Someone took out his mobile phone to record the video and boldly stepped forward, but was knocked down by the young man again. Without waiting for the people around to escape, the passerby who was bitten at the beginning also climbed up strangely and rushed to others. And a little further away from them, the same riot was happening. The chaos began. The TV with the volume turned down was playing The Legend of Zhang Huan, which I almost memorized. It was 12 noon, and Guo Liu was about to expose concubine Zai's affair, when the fragrant braised pork and cabbage and pork dumplings just came out of the pot. The braised pork was soft and delicious, and although the dumplings were instant food, they tasted not bad. The fresh meat you bought should be eaten as soon as possible. There are also some foods like dumplings that consume more water and electricity. It is better to eat them early before the water and electricity are cut off. I told my family early in the morning that the water and electricity would be cut off in about a week, and the folding buckets in the kitchen were already filled with water in advance. At this time, you don't need to look to know that various media have been boiling. But I have experienced all these before, and I am more concerned about the owner group. But they were not feeling well either. Although there was only a thin young couple in the upstairs house, they had knives and batons for self-defense. Chen He's left arm was also cut by the other party, but fortunately the wound was not deep and the bleeding stopped after a while. Chen He was still cursing dirty words, and Liu Jingjin was also holding his breath. Who would have thought that they could suddenly take out the self-defense things? Not to mention the things they robbed from the couple for a long time, they were only enough to eat for a few days. There was a lot of noise, Chen He was injured, and even attracted the zombies downstairs to hit the unit door for a while. These are not enough, we have to get some more, Liu Jingjin said. Didn't you see those people talking in the group? There are at least 20 households in our unit, and they can't escape. Chen He opened a bag of ham and ate it directly. Liu Jingjin was unhappy, but she wouldn't say it. After all, the other party was the main force of her robbery. Rest for 3 days. And then go get some supplies. Liu Jingjin said. It rained heavily at night, and after the rain, the zombies were not afraid of the sun. They evolved very quickly. The degree of decay of their bodies will also be greatly slowed down in the future. Very troublesome. It has been a week since the end of the world. The water, electricity, and network have been completely cut off, but we have stored a lot of water, so there is no need to worry about water. About the 4th day, something not so good happened. In the previous life, I didn't notice it because I didn't have a 24-hour duty. It was Xia Yang who was on duty in the second half of the night who told me. It was probably a family on the 3rd floor. For some reason, the zombies might have smelled the smell. In addition to knocking on the door, some zombies actually climbed to their windows. Fortunately, there are still a few zombies that can climb quickly, otherwise even high-rise buildings may not be safe. The radio was broadcasting news about the safe zone established by the government. Some people chose to leave with their remaining food in the past 2 days, but those who left would not have an easy way to survive. Rather than taking risks, our family chose to stay here. We believe that the government can lead us to fight this terrible apocalypse, but our family has no self-protection ability. Going out rashly would only give the zombies a meal. After a week, the food reserves of the families who did not receive supplies in the early stage were basically eaten up. No matter what happens next, I don't think it's surprising. I just woke up at noon. Today's recipe is beef fried with potatoes. The meat and potatoes are cut into small pieces and stir-fried. It is easy to cook and taste good. The beef is tender and chewy, and the potatoes are soft. It tastes super satisfying. After dinner, I was drinking a bottle of mineral water. Suddenly, I heard a noise outside. I went to the window and looked out. I found that there were zombies banging on the door downstairs of building 1 in the southwest, and there was a constant noise inside the building. More people who were out of ammunition and food began to sweep the building. But the situation in this building was the same as in my memory. Someone was unwilling to let the supplies be robbed. Not only did he open the window, he also took out a small speaker and played powerful music. That person wanted to die with the people who were robbing supplies in the building, but by doing so, it was estimated that all the survivors in the entire building were in danger. The zombies quickly broke through the floors, and screams and roars were endless. My mother was frightened by this scene and asked me if this would happen in our building. Xia Yang also looked at me nervously. Don't worry, we lived for a month in the previous life, and until then, nothing like this happened in our building. My words were a reassurance, which made the two of them feel relieved. In the afternoon, the snow-white curtains on the 8th floor of the opposite building turned red. This is the second house, I silently remember. Liu Jingjin and Chen He were in a more embarrassing situation this time. This time they were unlucky. The target was a man who lived alone and was a gym goer. After fighting with the other party for a long time, they only managed to get back a few things, many of which were fitness foods. Chen He's expression was not very good. It was Liu Jinjin who dodged just now that he was injured again. Liu Jinjin could only try to pretend to be gentle and considerate. She always felt that the other party was not in a good state these 2 days. She found a piece of instant chicken breast from the robbed supplies and handed it to the man with a smile, looking caring and gentle. Chen He's expression eased a little, but only a little. This little thing is not enough for 3 days. Chen He said. But we are still a little bit. Rob. Don't we have meat? Chen He looked cruel and looked to the side. Liu Jinjin looked over subconsciously. They had not had time to move the supplies back. At this time, the bloody former owner of the house was lying in the corner of the room. She widened her eyes, her stomach churning, but she smiled at Chen He's gaze. You're right. As the days passed, we gradually got used to falling asleep at night accompanied by the roar of zombies. Perhaps it was the inspiration of the unlucky guy who dragged the people on the first floor to death yesterday. The next day, a thin man and woman appeared on the upper floors of another building, shouting that if they were not given food, they would keep shouting and let everyone in the same building die together. Sister, do you think they got the supplies first, or were killed by the zombies first? Xia Yang asked me. Killed by people first. I answered him with certainty. After what happened yesterday, I was not surprised that someone would want to imitate it. Being caught by zombies would kill you, but in this case, you would also die if you didn't have food. Anyway, you would die, so you might as well take a gamble. If you can force your neighbors to provide supplies, they can survive. My brother and I stared at the family's situation, waiting for the follow-up. After a while, the family stopped shouting, probably because someone came to deliver supplies. Then there were several screams. The thin woman leaned on the window and cried for help, but was dragged back by a tall stranger. The curtains were splashed with blood. In the end, the headless bodies of the couple were thrown down. The murderer disappeared in the building. Seeing this, my family silently checked the house again. We survived for 3 months like this. The time of my death before rebirth had long passed. Liu Jinjin did not appear, but their building did not fall either. There are many smart people in the community, so they can naturally figure out the hunting rules of these zombies, not to mention that the stupid ones are dead. Once there is a first, there will be a second. In these 3 months, many bodies were thrown down in other buildings, one after another. Few people dared to go out, but they were much bolder in the buildings that were not conquered by zombies. At first, only the headless bodies were thrown away. And then the bodies gradually became incomplete, and the fleshy parts of the body were basically cut off. Obviously, not only zombies eat people, but people also start to eat people. These scenes made us so disgusted that we didn't eat any meat for 3 days, but fortunately, some of the vegetables we planted were already edible, and the supplies at home were only consumed a little bit, and there were also many fruits and vegetables that could be stored for a long time. Compared with the purgatory outside, our family's life was almost the same as before the disaster. 6. Perhaps humans have finally recovered from the attack of zombies, and more safe bases are broadcast on the radio. At noon one day, there was a helicopter hovering over our heads. The people inside shouted that they were actively eliminating zombies and would also deliver food to everyone. They hoped that everyone would wait for rescue with peace of mind. Those who had the conditions and ability could also choose to go to the safe base in the west that was closest to us. One family was probably too excited, so they opened the window directly and waved wildly to the people in the helicopter. Someone on the plane really threw some supplies downstairs. So more people reached out for help. Our family had sufficient supplies, so we didn't plan to occupy our share of supplies, nor did we want to expose ourselves early, so my mother, my brother, and I hid in the window to observe the situation. There were not many supplies on the plane, but we still tried our best to take care of a few people who waved. The dark green plane gave us great hope for survival. While I was happy, I also counted the people who dared to reach out for supplies. Due to the obstruction of vision, I could only see 11 households, most of which were scattered in different buildings. There were also people waving downstairs from our house, but only one family. The others either starved to death or... I was roughly estimating how many people had died in the past 3 months, and Xia Yang suddenly pulled my sleeve. Sister, I don't feel well. I looked at him puzzledly. At this time, people were trying their best to get the supplies downstairs, but the direction he pointed to was a tall and thin female zombie who was far away. The hair was very long, but because of decay, the hair in some places had fallen off, revealing pieces of scalp. But she just stood there blankly, and I still didn't understand. Look at the zombie's head, her eyes. She's looking at the survivors. Xia Yang's voice trembled. I was startled and immediately picked up the telescope to observe carefully. After all, our family is a big fat sheep, and we must be extremely careful to protect ourselves. Suddenly, a loud noise came over. The 3 of us paused, and my mother and I walked to the window at the same time and lifted a corner of the curtain to check. Xia Yang used a tablet to check the surveillance. A private car outside the community hid the statue at the door. Behind the car, there was a huge group of people running here quickly. But I can see clearly through the telescope. Those are actually zombies. This was the case in the previous life. Because of the rapid outbreak and fall of the city center, many people realized that they should run to places with fewer people. But this actually led the zombies in the city center to the periphery of the city. The people in the car probably wanted to escape, but something unexpected happened. The security guard wanted to go up to check, but as soon as he approached, a zombie rushed up from behind and bit him. For a moment, blood splattered and screams were heard. The buildings near the door were probably clearer. Someone in the owner group uploaded the video just now. I could still hear someone shouting in the community, "What on earth is this?" I couldn't help but turn my head and continue to emphasize to my family, zombies chase sounds, smells and lights. We should not make any noise or turn on the lights, and be as careful as possible. We left the window and went to Xia Yan to watch the surveillance with him. At this time, there were still some people active in the community. The zombies saw the living people and rushed into the community frantically. Some people ran fast and their homes were close, so they ran back in time, but some people couldn't escape at all. A girl in high heels died because she didn't run fast enough. Soon after being bitten by the zombies, the girl also stood up and became one of the zombies. After a while, there were no living people in the open space outside the community. The community was quiet. Looking at the circle of friends, people were talking about the zombies that appeared today. Some people also contacted me and sent me messages, but to be honest, I really don't have many friends. I didn't dare to contact people in the company, for fear that they would tell Liu Jingjing about it, so I just pretended to be dead in the circle of friends. At this time, the number of owners in the group quickly became 99 plus, and almost everyone was terrified and wailing. What should we do? What should we do? Has anyone called the police? Yes, but can the police come? There are zombies knocking on the door at the door of our unit. Don't make any noise. 1 or 2 of them will not be able to knock it open. Don't let more zombies hear it. We don't have any food at home. Who has food? I'll buy it. There are children at home. I'll give you any money you want to buy food. There are more people who want to buy food. But everyone is smart. Who is willing to take out food in this situation? In this situation, only food is hard currency, and money is waste paper. But soon, the property management staff appeared. Don't panic, owners. In this situation, please don't go out and hide at home. As for supplies, we will do a statistics now. Everyone report how many people and how much food there are in your home. Everyone helps each other. Try to make sure everyone has food and can wait for rescue. Some people began to naively talk about their own situation. But from beginning to end, most of the people who took the initiative to count were those with less supplies at home. They hoped to get help. Our family didn't say anything. After all, I am now a mover. My mother was frightened by the bloody scene, and finally understood what the zombies that Xia Yong and I talked about were. At this point, my mother became anxious after realizing it. Do we have enough food? Will those monsters come? Our family's supplies are enough for the 3 of us to eat for 2 or 3 years. The government will not leave these monsters alone. We just need to do our best to survive now. I comforted her. My mother nodded, but turned around and couldn't help but go to the back to get a cake to eat. When my mother is nervous and anxious, she will eat something sweet. These cream cakes don't last long, and I and Xia Yang each got one, so that we can eat some cake after lunch. When we finished lunch and cleaned up, I saw that the owner group had changed. Just as I remembered, someone revealed that there was a small supermarket and warehouse over there in the property building. Under pressure, the property also promised to try to distribute food to everyone according to the number of people. As a result, a head-hunting competition started in the group. There are 26 households in our building, so you should take care of us first, right? We all have families here. The quarrels in the group became more and more fierce. I thought that our building was at the corner and there were relatively few people living in it. I felt that even if the property management was really kind enough to send people, they would not be able to send people to our floor, so I felt relieved and quit the group chat and started to read some news. My mother was watching the news on TV, and the TV was also reporting that there was an infectious case of people biting people, and urged citizens not to go out and wait for rescue. Xia Yang handed me his phone. It was a hot search on a certain blog. Many people were trapped at home, but they were really short of food and were seeking help online. In addition, in many cities, all TV programs would stop broadcasting CCTV after 2 days, and CCTV would repeatedly broadcast, calling on everyone to stock up supplies and stay at home, not to go out unless necessary, and wait for rescue. These are all things I have experienced before. However, it is still in the early stage, and there are more people surviving. I will check the situation of survivors in the city online. However, those who really have supplies should choose not to speak out like me. I was scrolling through my phone, and suddenly I found that the owner group was atting me. I felt cold in my heart. But I didn't dare to speak. I just joined the group to check the situation, for I was relieved after reading it carefully. It turned out that the quarrel was between the 2 buildings with the least number of people, and one of them was the unit in my building. Probably the owner of the 10th floor of our building deliberately exaggerated the number of people in our building in order to get the supplies, including me, who had already moved out. He also said that there were 5 people in our family, a couple, an old man, and 2 children. Unexpectedly, someone at me and said that they saw me moving house in batches in the past 2 days. Now I am not here, so the owner of the 10th floor should not make up the number of people here to cheat for supplies. Several other owners also echoed that they saw that the lights in my house had not been turned on for a long time. I don't know if they really saw it, or they just wanted to give less supplies to our building. After a closer look, I found that the person at me was actually the property management staff. I couldn't help but raise my eyebrows. Xiao Yang saw that I was a little happy, so he came over and asked me what was going on. I explained the situation to him and said with a smile, I don't think the property management really wants to send these supplies, but now the owners are so numerous and powerful that they are afraid that someone will rush in to grab them, so they compromised. Xiao Yang understood immediately. They don't want to give too many supplies to the people in the building, and there shouldn't be many supplies in their small supermarket, so they are in a hurry to point out that our family is not here. On the one hand, it can reduce the supplies that need to be given, and on the other hand, it may be justified to suspect that others have also falsely reported the number of people, and can save more supplies. I took a bite of the cake, and the Chocolate tasted sweet, but thanks to them, everyone knows that our family has moved away. My mother was relieved to know this. But Xiao Yang still frowned. Sister, I don't think this matter will end so soon. You see, there were many people in the group who didn't speak out, but they suddenly spoke out when they heard that there were supplies in the supermarket and warehouse. Although there may still be people who don't speak out, most people are now exposed in the group. Then when some people are desperate in the later stage, they will have a clear goal of where to grab food. I was stunned and suddenly thought of Liu Jingjing. No wonder they were able to successfully grab so many things in the last life, allowing them to survive and come to our house in the end. Even now, the supplies haven't really reached them. Xiao Yang added, by the way, before did they distribute supplies? I knew he meant before rebirth, they did, but not much, and let the owners find a way to get them. At that time, because there was food at home, my mother and I didn't speak out. When it was night, there were still a lot of zombies wandering outside. I quietly observed the direction of Liu Jingjing's house. The whole building was very quiet, without any movement. Maybe it's not yet time for them to come out to grab food. Someone had turned on the lights when it was just getting dark. But the zombies downstairs seemed to find their direction instantly, rushing towards the building frantically and knocking open the doors downstairs. After a few screams, everyone also realized that the zombies tend to move towards light. So the neighborhood became dark and quiet at night. During this period, Liu Jingjing also called me, but I muted the phone and threw it aside. In the apocalypse, if someone can't be contacted, then others will most likely think that the other person is dead. Compared to answering the phone and acting with her, there is the risk of being seen through, so it's better to pretend to be dead. Sure enough, she stopped calling after a few times. Today's dinner at home was made before it was completely dark. I made cola chicken wings and steamed some instant steamed dumplings from the refrigerator. The soup dumplings were full of soup when I took a bite, and the cola chicken wings were also delicious. I could eat them all I wanted in one breath. For a moment, I felt that this was happier than going to work before the apocalypse. I can run and generate electricity before going to bed. Then I took a nice bath. While the water was still running, we wanted to take a bath twice a day. Before going to bed, Xiao Yang watched the surveillance in the corridor again and told me that the family on the left of the 15th floor wanted to pry open the door of the family on the right, but the family on the right was 3 young people who shared the house. 3 big men easily dealt with a thin and weak clerk, but all the supplies of the family on the left were snatched away by the opposite side. Since it was the first day, it was relatively safe and we did not arrange night duty. The family squeezed into the bedroom for the night, but they did not sleep well. There were zombies roaring outside. On the morning of the second day, they were awakened by the screams of humans. Everything was the same as before. In order to keep the supplies, the people hiding in the property still asked other owners to collect the supplies themselves. Some people went out early in the morning, but not many people could really get them. Half of them died on the road. But after all, it was still the beginning of the apocalypse, and everyone had some reserves, so not many people really took the risk to go out. I didn't see Liu Jingjing, so I didn't know what was going on there. But I guessed that they didn't have a lot of things there. Although their house was on the 11th floor, she preferred to buy clothes and bags rather than stock up on food at home. Whatever she needed to eat, she could just order takeout and it would be delivered to her door. So I didn't need to do anything about revenge, the apocalypse, zombies, and hunger would be able to deal with that couple. I just needed to eat hot pot at home and watch them die. But this morning, we really had hot pot. Xiao Yang took out the bone soup hot pot base, which didn't seem good to eat in the morning, but since it was already unpacked, my mother let him do it. While happily eating the meat slices, we planned our night shifts. There were only 3 people at home, but the zombies didn't care how many of us there were. We'd better fill up the 24 hours. Because during the day, the zombies would move slower and there would be less pressure. So 8 hours during the day were given to my mother. Then the remaining 8 hours were divided equally between Xiao Yang and me, with 12 o'clock in the evening as the boundary. I was mainly on duty in the first half of the night, and he was mainly on duty in the second half of the night. But this was only temporary. After a while, someone would definitely come out to grab things during the day. At that time, the shift schedule would have to be changed again. I leaned on the window and watched the situation outside for a while. Most of the people who came to collect supplies drove there, but they didn't actually get much. It seemed that they only got a few boxes of instant noodles, and didn't see much bagged rice and noodles. Some people didn't make it back, and the supplies, cars, and their lives were left in the square. Some people didn't even reach the property. Zombies chased after the cars and pounced on them. One car had its glass smashed, and the people inside were dragged out alive and eaten. After all this, the community was quiet again. But the owner's group was still noisy. Some people had already started to curse. They cursed the property for not delivering supplies and the neighbors for not being willing. However, this situation will not last too long. Although the water and electricity will be cut off in 5 or 6 days, the network will have problems before that. However, probably because some people went out, some people in the owner group said that they found the iron chain lock and door blocker behind the safety passage door. They said that they had locked the floor lock. Some people also bravely went to look for it and found it. But some buildings did not have it. I took a look and almost everyone in our building found it and locked it. This made me feel relieved. In this way, our house should not be conspicuous, and more people will be able to survive. Because I had to monitor the zombies later, I went to rest early. In order to take care of the duty, I was called up late for lunch. I ate 2 bowls of hot braised chicken rice with meat and vegetables in one go. Everything was great. The only pity was that I didn't dare to use electrical appliances that were easily exposed. Don't even think about air conditioners and range hoods. But compared with other people who didn't store supplies in the end of the world, we are much better. However, when I was sleeping, there was a family in front of me. They used a drone with a loudspeaker to lure away the zombies. 5 people went out. They actually went back and forth twice to get 5 trucks of supplies. In the end, it seemed that only less than 1/3 of the supplies were left in the car, as a token of their distribution to everyone. Without waiting for people from other buildings to come, other people in their own building quickly snatched them away. During this period, some people were watching, and some people took advantage of the few zombies to look for supplies. A lot of things were taken away from the property. It's not that no one has their eyes on this family's things, but that family is not easy to talk to. The people who lived on the same floor with them took a knife and tried to snatch more food from them, and they broke their legs directly. After they transferred the supplies, they attracted more zombies than before. They also deliberately attracted some zombies to the downstairs of their building. This family is really powerful. At least before our family died last time, they were hiding well. Some people went to the units in their building to sweep the building, but for some reason they didn't find them. But I know that this family is not easy to mess with, but the people in the owner group don't know. Originally, they got so many supplies that people were jealous. In the end, most people didn't share them. Afterwards, they deliberately attracted more zombies. People in the owner group are constantly criticizing them. Some people uploaded the video of them beating their neighbors. It can be seen that their family has 2 women and 3 men, probably a couple and 3 young children. The couple looks to be in their 30s or 40s. The 3 young people are about 20 years old, and 2 boys can be seen to be twins. These people tried to use these videos to force them to share the supplies. Some people threatened that they knew which unit you were in. If you don't hand it over, don't blame us for robbing. But the family didn't say anything at all and ignored them. In the first few days of the zombie outbreak, the zombies moved slowly and were afraid of light. The family was lucky to choose the most appropriate time to go out and loot supplies. My mother went to observe the vegetables planted at home, and I hurried Xiaoyang to sleep so that he could have enough energy to take over my shift. It is only the second day of the apocalypse, and the evil of human nature has not been completely aroused. The real pressure is still to come. At 12 o'clock in the evening, I took over the shift with my brother and fell into a deep sleep. On the afternoon of the 5th day after the zombies came, the network signal became extremely poor. The previous second, I was still watching various mutual rescues and noises in the owner group on the internet. The next second, I refreshed and the page turned white. The surveillance installed by Xiaoyang was barely usable, but the freeze and delay were also very serious. Before the network was completely disconnected, Xiaoyang told me that the 3 young men on the 15th floor were ready to search for food from their floor down. 5. I have to thank my foresight again. Before rebirth, these 3 people also smashed our door. It was only because we attracted the zombies that we dealt with them. But because of this, our door was surrounded by zombies for a long time. But now that they know that we have moved away, the situation is completely different. But the network failure made it impossible for everyone to contact each other, and the invisible mutual surveillance was completely eliminated. The first evil of the end of the world was born at this time. At night, I was monitoring the situation outside while eating potato chips after dinner. Suddenly, I heard a faint scream. But the distance was too far, and the doors and windows were closed, so I couldn't hear it clearly. But the zombies downstairs seemed to smell blood. They rushed in one direction. But the scream only lasted for a moment. The zombies who couldn't find their target resumed their wandering appearance. Although it was not in Liu Jingjin's building, I knew it had been 5 days, and their family was probably about to collapse. Sure enough, I woke up the next day. My mother told me that she saw blood sprayed on a window on the upper floor of Liu Jingjin's building opposite, but there were no zombies in that building. They can hold on for a month before finding us, which means that their neighbors will be killed by them in this month. Unfortunately, the notice seems to be useless. I hope others can hold on. Liu Jingjing and Chen He took the stolen things back home. Sure enough, the turbid eyes were staring at the positions of the people who had just waved. Even through careful observation, I found 2 other zombies in the same situation. This news is very bad. I even suspect that they have a certain degree of wisdom. I hurriedly told my mother that we should move less in the next 2 days, eat some fast food, and the less noise the better. I felt a strong sense of uneasiness in my heart, and I had a premonition that there would be a terrible massacre next. That night, when Xiaoyang was eating instant noodles and monitoring the zombies, he found that the zombies had broken open a unit door for no reason and rushed into the building. Among the people who went downstairs to grab the supplies sent by the J party. During the day, the most people came out of their unit. This is the second building slaughtered by zombies since the end of the world. In the first building, the desperate people perished along with the people in the entire building. Then came this one. The scary thing is that this time it was completely a spontaneous movement of zombies. Did anyone reach out to our building? Mother panicked. I don't know how these intelligent zombies communicate with ordinary zombies, but once they break in, they will knock down every door. If they attack our floor tonight, I'm afraid we will not be able to escape death. We don't have many ways to deal with it. We can only hurry up and put some heavy things at the door to at least block it. I prayed secretly that the quality of this door must be able to hold up. After slaughtering the zombies in the first building, they howled excitedly. But before they started the second slaughter, gunshots came from a distance. 5 or 6 modified trucks drove into the community from outside. They shot as they walked. After entering, many people jumped down from the trucks and started killing zombies. My mother was very happy and thought the army was coming. Xiao Yao quickly stopped my mother's action. No. Look carefully, their shooting skills are not good. Are the soldiers really so bad at shooting? After saying this, I noticed that many of them were completely venting their bullets into the zombies. Few can snipe the zombies' vital points. Even if there is fire suppression in front, it is difficult for people hiding in the back to hit the zombies' heads with guns. You are right. Many places have fallen now. It is not surprising that some desperate people get guns. I agreed, let's keep quiet. These people may be very dangerous. Let's observe the situation first. My mother listened to my and my brother's opinions very much, and our family hid more carefully. At noon, we only dared to find a self-heating hot pot to eat. The three of us carefully hid in the window to watch the intruders. These people fought with the zombies for a while, but standing on a high place, my vision was wider and more obvious. At the end of the fight, I clearly felt that the zombies were not disbanded, but more like they were consciously evacuating. I thought of the three zombies that seemed to have intelligence. They were not among the zombie corpses lying downstairs. A chill suddenly jumped up from my back. They will come back. Xia Yang and his mother's faces also looked ugly. There were about 20 to 30 people in the modified convoy. After fighting the zombies in the community, a woman stood up and shouted with a loudspeaker, saying that they were a rescue organization jointly with the military, and there were soldiers in the team. They said that they would stay here for a few days to clear the zombies. If anyone needed supplies, they could come down to get some shares, or join them, and they would escort people to the nearest safe base. Looking closely, there seemed to be a person in green clothes in the crowd. The helicopter that brought hope to everyone a few days ago made the survivors here blindly believe in the convoy in front of them. Several families came out one after another, all carrying supplies, and obviously they really thought they could be escorted to a safe base. And just as I expected, these people were not good people at all, and none of the people who came out could go back. All the supplies were taken away, and then the men were killed, and the young women were dragged to the car behind them. You can imagine what will happen. Someone gave out the information about the property food warehouse in an attempt to survive, but this group of people looted the warehouse, and then turned around and killed the person who revealed the information and the fat survivors hiding in the warehouse. However, I suddenly found that there was a man among these people who survived. I took out the telescope and saw that it was an acquaintance. It was Liu Jingjin's boyfriend. But I only found the boyfriend, and Liu Jingjin was missing. But her ending can be guessed. Nothing more than that, she is dead. Liu Jingjin actually survived for 3 months after the apocalypse. With Chen He, they could rob even if they had no food. But it was just because of a damn reason, because of a notice from the property before the Doomsday, several families prepared a lot of self-defense items at home. They were injured and forced to eat people. Originally, they could survive like this, but on the last day when they were grabbing supplies, she was slashed in the face. She clearly saw the disgust in Chen He's eyes, and there were only 2 words in her mind, it's over. She knew Chen He too well. He was willing to support her just to see her look good as a pastime. Chen He's moral conscience, which was not much in the Doomsday, had long disappeared. Liu Jingjin didn't expect the other party to pity her, so she could only try her best to show that she was useful. Chen He didn't treat her as food. But the relationship between the two has always been subtle. Until today, a team of people claiming to be a rescue organization came. Liu Jingjin felt that this team was wrong and didn't want to go, but Chen He was determined to go to the safe base and take the supplies away. Liu Jingjin secretly hid some supplies, thinking that she could survive even if he left, but Chen He, who had always been brainless, suddenly came to his senses and thought that there must be something wrong with her not crying or making a fuss and not wanting supplies. As a result, the supplies hidden by Liu Jingjin were found. Liu Jingjin knew that she was going to die, so she picked up a knife and fought with Chen He, but she was no match for the other party's brute force. She felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen, and a knife had pierced deeply into Liu Jingjin's abdomen. Blood gushed out, and vitality quickly drained from her body. Just like the victims they killed, she was about to die. When Chen He hurriedly left with supplies reflected in her gradually darkening eyes, Liu Jingjin pulled out a weak sneer. Those people were definitely not good people. Go to hell. Chen He, our family was closely watching every move downstairs. It can be seen that Chen He was able to save his life because he gave a piece of paper. The leader of the convoy was a strong man, holding a gun in his hand and arranging his men to move the remaining supplies in the warehouse. The leader looked at Chen He. You mean, the list shows the location of the survivors in the community? Yes. Chen He nodded affirmatively. I counted them when the zombies first appeared. It must be correct. You counted them? The leader sneered. The list was written in small and beautiful words, which did not look like something a 1.8-meter tall strong man could write. Chen He shuddered. Yes, it's my girlfriend, but she's dead. The leader pointed a gun at Chen He and asked him where he lived. The latter stammered and confessed the truth. The leader gave a look, and his men understood, and immediately trotted out and came back soon. Yes, a woman died, but several families in that building also died. They were killed, the flesh on their bodies was gone. People were killed, the flesh was gone, and combined with the list, what else did the leader not know? How disgusting. Even I don't eat people. As soon as he finished speaking, he fired a gun. Chen He died, and I felt a little happy, especially seeing him die in front of me. But there is still a crisis waiting for me, and I can't relax yet. After Chen He died, the leader started to sweep the building with people, and quickly found a hiding person. It is hard not to see that the other party had a purpose. I'm afraid that what Chen He handed over was something like a list of survivors. But they didn't have it all smooth sailing. They didn't find the family who brought back a lot of supplies at the beginning of the Doomsday. 1 building, 2 units, they searched but couldn't find it. But the leader was angry, but helpless, fired a few shots into the air, turned around and led people to search other buildings. Fortunately, we were located in the inner part, so they couldn't come quickly. But since there was a list of things, the probability that the other party would come to our house should not be high. But if they see the locked door on the floor, it should not be difficult to guess that there are people on our upper floors. Xia Yao's face was pale. I never thought that our precautions would become a dangerous signal that exposed ourselves. Xiao Yao planned to go downstairs to unlock the door, but the only survivor in our building did not go out. If we go out now, we are afraid that we will be discovered by the remaining survivors downstairs. My mother even planned to stay in a random house downstairs and try to trick the team that there was no one upstairs. But I don't agree with their ideas. There must be a way, there must be a way. I told myself to stay calm, there must be a way. At this time, gunshots were heard from downstairs. The noise was quite loud and attracted 2 zombies in the distance. But before they could get close, the robbers shot them dead. I thought of those zombies that were obviously intelligent, and a bold plan came to my mind. I had to lure them back as soon as possible. 7 These people did not continue to search, and they only worked for a morning before taking a break. After all, they had the advantage, and they could do whatever they wanted. So they spent the whole afternoon having fun, and during that time, 2 more naked female bodies were thrown away. At night, they directly grilled skewers. They grilled meat and stewed soup in a pot, and our family could only gather together to eat instant noodles. We didn't dare to turn on the nightlight, and all actions had to be done carefully, for fear of being discovered. Xiao Yao and I gathered together, cut the blood and smeared it on a few slices of pork. After cutting the blood, my mother immediately came forward and bandaged us with heartache. The bloody meat was hung on the drone, and my brother volunteered to operate the drone to attract zombies. I found the dusty and strange perfume that I bought a long time ago and kept at the bottom of the box to cover the bloody smell in the house. We released the drone in the direction of the house facing away from those people, and Xiao Yang operated the drone to fly low all the way and left the community. Our community is backed by scenic mountains and lakes, and there is an uninhabited university town. The only zombies are those attracted at the beginning of the apocalypse. This time, Xiao Yang said that he would control the drone to try his best to get close to the city and attract as many zombies as possible. As soon as the drone left the community, we saw another drone flying out of the community. Both sides paused, but we tacitly pretended not to see each other. There was a sanitary napkin soaked with blood hanging under the other party's drone, and it was obvious that the purpose was the same as ours. Sure enough, the closer we got to the city, the more zombies there were. Our drone went up and turned around, and immediately many zombies followed eagerly. The 2 drones attracted 2 waves of zombies to approach the community respectively. When they approached the community, Xiao Yang exclaimed, "Those 3 zombies didn't leave." The images sent over showed that the 3 zombies actually gathered a large group of zombies nearby. In addition to the 2 groups of zombies we brought, the 3 zombies that were obviously intelligent took the lead and roared. Then, with the howling of zombies, a large group of zombies came to our community. I quickly asked Xiao Yang to fly the drone back, but I didn't dare to fly it directly home. Instead, I put it outside the window of a house in the building across the street that had been slaughtered. Xiao Yang's face was terrible. "If those 3 come back, we won't be safe either," he said. "This is really a wolf in front and a tiger behind. But I think the intelligence of zombies can't develop too fast, so I decided to take a gamble. Take out all the towels, soak them in water, and stuff them into the cracks of the door, making sure that no smell leaks out of the cracks." At this time, the people in the convoy downstairs had already discovered the approaching zombies. They reacted very quickly, first killing the woman robbed from the team to eliminate unstable factors, and then setting up guns to shoot at the zombie group. Outside was the deafening sound of gunfire and the roar of zombies, but in front of them was a zombie group that was more than 10 times theirs. They could suppress it for a while, but it was basically impossible to win. Our family gathered together and secretly prayed that we could survive this crisis safely. However, the battle lasted no more than 10 minutes before the zombies rushed forward and broke through their defenses. These people were desperate people in the end times, and it was impossible to expect them to work together to fight against these monsters. It can be said that when the zombies rushed to them, they had already collapsed on their own. The modified car was reinforced with steel plates, and many of them hid in the car directly on the spot. Others did not have time, and retreated to the corridor while fighting with guns. Our building was at the corner of the community. Under the pursuit of the zombies rushing in from the main gate, a group of people retreated while fighting, and actually retreated to our building. Some of them even forced open our unit door with guns. When these people rushed into our building, my mother panicked. "What should we do? What if they find us? They bring zombies up." "Mom, it's okay, our corridor is locked. They can't outrun the zombies. We are on more than 20 floors. When they get tired halfway, the zombies can take care of them." Xiao Yao comforted his mother softly. "I didn't dare to gamble, so I found perfume and air fresheners and other things and put them out. If the zombies really break into our place, we must do everything we can to cover up our smell." Xiao Yang silently took out a knife. "Sister, if the zombies come up, I will go out and lead them away. Killing one is one." My mother's tears immediately fell. "Silly child, if we have to go, it's Mom who goes out. No, no one of us will go out. Our family must be fine. We can live this long, and we can live longer in the future, until these zombies are wiped out." We hugged each other and cried silently. The roars, gunshots, and footsteps of the zombies echoed in the corridor. The clanging sound of copper bells told us that the locked security doors downstairs were being broken open one by one. The angry curses and intermittent screams of people were particularly obvious in these noisy sounds. The sound was very close. I drew a 23 on the floor with my fingers with shaking hands. The distance of this sound was already downstairs. Some of them must have died, and I forced myself to calm down. Looking at my mother and brother in front of me, for the first time in my life, I prayed that gods and Buddhas really exist and bless our family to survive. Finally, the security door of the corridor was hit, and then a gunshot was heard. But the door did not open. They only knocked off one lock, and there were 3 hanging on it. Then I heard 2 angry curses, and the sound of shaking hands changing bullets. One of the male voices even roared and threatened to let the people upstairs open the door quickly, otherwise he would definitely kill the people inside. But the people outside the door had no time. The door was hit hard, and then it shook violently, accompanied by screams and curses, and the crisp tinkling of copper bells. Blood flowed in from outside, dyeing the area red. Our family desperately sprayed perfume and air freshener in the direction of the door. We didn't dare to use the spray, and the family desperately covered their mouths, not daring to make any sound. Fortunately, these zombies that chased into the building were just ordinary zombies without intelligence. They had no target when they ate the meat in front of them. The copper bell on the safety passage would ring when they hit the door. But compared to the gunshots outside, its sound was too small. The door of the safety passage was not hit much, but zombies downstairs had already run out one after another, heading towards the place where the gunshots were heard. Our family still didn't dare to make a sound. We didn't even dare to breathe. Then we heard a violent explosion outside. A modified car was overturned by zombies and then exploded. The other people in the car just ignored it and started driving, rushing around, trying to escape from here. Then some zombies chased the car and ran away. There were only a few zombies left in the corridor. The most dangerous robber outside had also fled. The 3 of us looked at each other with tears in our eyes. But now is not the time to relax. There is still an intelligent zombie wandering in the open space outside the community downstairs. I lifted a corner of the curtain and observed carefully. It was still the female zombie at the beginning, but this zombie's ability to command other zombies should also be limited. When there are living people in front of them, most zombies will only chase living people. When I found that the female zombie was staring at my drone parked on another building, I raised my heart. Xia Yao handed me a note. It will be fine. I nodded silently. Definitely, it will be fine. 8 zombies have been wandering downstairs for 3 days. It has also been 3 days since the previous great turmoil. The drones we parked on other floors were destroyed by zombies climbing up layer by layer. But fortunately, the zombies only had some intelligence but not human thinking ability. After wandering downstairs for a few days without smelling the human smell, the zombies, led by the intelligent zombies, left the community in 2s and 3s. There were only a dozen or 20 zombies left out of the hundreds of zombies. The robber convoy also suffered heavy losses. Only 2 of the 4 modified trucks came in and ran away. The remaining 1 exploded, and 1 was parked forever in the community square. Our family was very cautious and did not relax until 2 days after most of the zombies left. We hugged and cried. We survived this crisis. My mother cooked her specialty pork ribs, winter melon and kelp soup, and made leek and pork dumplings. The leeks in it were the ones we had worked hard to grow since the apocalypse, and we also picked mushrooms and fried them as a side dish. The portions of the dishes were not large, but compared to dry biscuits and the like, the hot meals made us feel alive after surviving a disaster. After this experience, there were fewer living people in the community. But it does not mean that there were no living people. The other drone that attracted zombies that day also flew out of our community, so there must be people. It may be the family that first robbed the most food and has not been found yet. Or there may be survivors in the community that I don't know about. So after a short celebration, our family resumed keeping a low profile. The next time the J-Party helicopter came, the community was unexpectedly quiet. I guess the people in the helicopter also saw the mess in the community. The helicopter flew around a few times, and the loudspeaker tried to call the survivors to respond. But the community was still quiet. But the helicopter still dropped supplies, which was only a little more than the last time. Seeing that the sound of the aircraft attracted more and more zombies, the aircraft had to choose to evacuate. If there are any survivors alive, I hope you can protect yourself. Please try to survive. The helicopter flew away, and the roar attracted a large number of zombies. There seemed to be only 3 or 4 zombies left in the community square. We did not encounter any crisis afterwards, and the survivors in the community did not want to show up. But the family who had disappeared after grabbing the supplies at the beginning of the Doomsday vaguely revealed a little trace on their rooftop. It is estimated that they did something, and the next time the helicopter came, they dropped supplies on their rooftop. Then, unexpectedly, there was also a survivor on the opposite side of Liu Jingjin's building, a thin boy with colorful hair. He also marked the building, so supplies were also dropped. But it seemed that there were only 2 survivors. After discussing with Xia Yang, I decided not to ask for supplies for the time being, in addition to hiding ourselves, because we had enough supplies. We often listened to the radio, because we were close to the safe base in the suburbs. We could get a lot of information. For example, after the initial self-defense war, GJ has begun to plan a counterattack. We believe that the final victory will not be long. Just like that, another 2 months passed. The Chinese New Year is coming soon. This winter is particularly cold. Fortunately, I bought warm clothes and sleeping bags a long time ago. Every day, I wake up to a bowl of hot soup, and I wrap myself in a military coat all day. My mother is in poor health, and the power outside the freezer is kept by the small son and the charging hot water bag for her. Perhaps it is because of the more careful attention that my mother did not get sick, but it is estimated that it would be more difficult for ordinary families. On the morning of New Year's Eve, a drone flew out. The colorful colors were very familiar. It was the other drone that attracted zombies that day. Looking through the telescope, there was a note below, saying that it hoped to exchange for medicine. The other party didn't know that there were people on our side, so they just flew to the family who had disappeared after robbing the supplies. The drone hovered for a long time, and the family opened the window, but only gave a box of medicine, waved helplessly at the drone, and then closed the window. Staring at the route the drone took, I determined that this was the thin boy with colorful hair who lived on the east side of the 23rd floor on the opposite building. After all, they were comrades in arms who attracted zombies to save themselves, so they could barely be considered friendly. Besides, there was another spare drone at home, so we found common medicines for treating colds and inflammation, packed them up and prepared to send them over. My mother called me, took out some of the dumplings prepared at home, and hung them on the drone. It's not easy to get through until now. Have a good new year. Xia Yang wrote a sentence of Happy New Year, then quietly went out with the drone, circled the community for half a circle before approaching the house from the opposite direction. Soon the window on the opposite side opened, and I could see from the closer picture that he was actually she, a girl dressed in a more neutral way. The other party's face was red, and she was obviously sick. The other party seemed surprised. She took off the medicine and the still warm dumplings, made a wait gesture to the drone, and then hung back a bag of snacks and a note. We still went around a long way before we retrieved the drone, and we even opened the window from the side facing away from the community to retrieve it. The note said thank you and Happy New Year, and also asked if we could consider working together to monitor the zombies. She had a walkie-talkie, so she could work with another family to protect themselves. The other party sent a lot of biscuits and some spicy strips. After receiving the food, our family had a heated discussion about the other party's proposal. My mother thought we could cooperate, and there was strength in numbers. But Xiao Yang thought that people's hearts were separated from their stomachs, and we should not trust others easily. 1-to-1, the final decision fell into my hands. Although I was very tempted, after thinking it over again and again, I still felt that it was better not to cooperate. Now, there are only 3 of us surviving in the community, but the current situation is that they are in the open and we are in the dark. And the family that moved the supplies withstood so many sweeps without being caught. They must have a special way to protect themselves, so the only one who is really in the open is the girl with colored hair on the opposite building. Maybe we can lend a hand at some point, but after all, we are strangers to each other, and rash cooperation may lead to dangerous situations. Without getting a response from us, the girl on the opposite floor also knew what we meant, and then she sent a message to another family with a drone. But there was no follow-up either. Now, everyone's relationship is very subtle, everyone is on guard against each other, but also helps each other. On New Year's Eve, my mother made meat dumplings and stewed chicken with mushrooms. With fresh eggs and duck eggs, my mother cherished and made egg custard and fried duck eggs for us. Unfortunately, there was no fresh fish, only salted fish, so my mother fried some green vegetables, which was considered to be surplus every year. My cooking skills are average, so I followed and made 3 small pumpkin cakes. The portion of each dish is not much, and the total is just enough for us to eat, but it also means New Year's Eve dinner when it is spread out. The chicken soup was delicious, the fresh egg custard was tender and delicious, and there were fresh vegetables grown at home. Such food was nothing before the end of the world, but it was a luxury after the end of the world. At night, with the dim night light, the mobile phone played the Spring Festival gala of previous years, and we raised Coke to celebrate our survival in such a difficult year. Next year, we must survive, I whispered, until the zombies are eliminated. Mother added. Xiao Yang followed and toasted, drinking it all. On the first day of the new year, we did not relax our vigilance. I woke up early in the morning, and my mother was still sleeping. I took out the self-heating hot pot for Xiao Yang, who had been guarding all night, and by the way, I made a pack of instant noodles for myself, with ham sausage, to deal with it. How is it? I asked him. Xiao Yang shook his head. No problem, but before you woke up, I saw a car driving by. The target may be a supermarket or a pharmacy. Is there anyone looking for supplies at this time? I frowned. Then I realized that it was probably because there were survivors in our community and the government dropped supplies every once in a while, which made me forget the cruelty outside. I am afraid there are still survivors. Although their hiding places are safe, they have not been discovered by the government, so they cannot get survival supplies. When it was time for lunch, there was a faint noise outside, and I saw a car drifting beautifully, quickly leaving the zombies behind and disappearing from sight. It's the car in the morning. Xiao Yao came over and said while eating a pack of biscuits that were about to expire. There are too few people here, and they are all on high floors. There is no smell of living people, and zombies basically don't come. Taking advantage of the free time, I asked Xiao Yang to sort out the supplies at home again, mainly to find out the food that is about to expire and eat it quickly to avoid waste. It doesn't matter if I find it this time. I am afraid that I will have to eat biscuits and fast food in the next few days. But it is better than having nothing to eat in the future. A few days later, the radio became active again. It was no longer just calling on everyone to protect themselves or go to the safe base. New information was added to the radio. The government safe base closest to us has begun to cooperate with other safe bases to gradually eliminate zombies with the base as the center. The progress of the elimination is often broadcast on the radio, and we also see a lot of hope. However, it was okay at the beginning. After the new year, as time went by, the temperature gradually warmed up, and the radio added content, which was the zombie tide warning. As the temperature warmed up, the zombies began to move north. We had to listen to the radio more frequently than before to avoid missing any important news. The arrival of the zombie tide also forced the cleanup work to come to an end. The radio had announced that the base was on alert. We also raised our hearts. The closest wave of zombies passed by the road outside our community. The powerful force they concentrated on caused walls and houses to collapse wherever they went. A community in the distance was on the road where the zombie tide was advancing. The rumbling sound of high-rise buildings collapsing made our family fall into insomnia. Although we can hide in high buildings, we have nowhere to escape. It was only after I witnessed the horror of the zombie tide that I became afraid. Fortunately, our community is not a community with a high occupancy rate, and many survivors died before the end of the world. Otherwise, our community might become a feeding ground for the zombies on their migration route. Probably due to the pressure of the zombie tide, the government's material delivery has been suspended. But it is also true that the movement of helicopters will probably only lead the zombies to the survivors. It is already April, and several waves of zombie tides have moved intermittently for nearly 2 months. During this period, the safe base closest to us was besieged by zombies many times, and several times even sent out distress signals to the outside world. But fortunately, the base survived. But the base was also severely damaged. The radio said that the base is currently being rebuilt, and the rear work will be done well before further clearing out zombies and rescuing people. I calculated that it has been 9 months since the end of the world. Even after the zombie tide passed, the neighborhood was still very quiet. It was not my time to monitor the outside world. I opened a box of snacks that were about to expire and watched The Fault in Our Stars for the umpteenth time. Seeing Julie Baker sitting on a tree and looking at the distant scenery, I felt a little envious. I don't know how long it will take for this catastrophe to end so that we can go out and see the sunset and the sunset glow. But it's probably nothing for Xiaoyang. He eats and drinks every day and doesn't seem to feel uncomfortable being trapped at home. About half a month later, the radio began to announce the activities of clearing out the zombies in the city. The battle advanced from the edge of the city to the city center. At first, we saw soldiers with guns passing by us, and they would also send teams to clear out the zombies in our neighborhood. There were only a few kittens in the neighborhood, and they were quickly dealt with, but the soldiers downstairs used loudspeakers to tell the survivors to continue hiding and not to let down their guard. Zombies could come here again at any time during the clearing process. After the announcement, the soldiers left quickly. However, this time we really saw hope. 9. But this process is not as simple as we imagined. About a month after the joint zombie eradication operation in multiple places, an urgent notice was issued on the radio, saying that a considerable number of intelligent zombies had appeared and formed a team with a certain degree of mobility. For a time, the nationwide zombie eradication activities fell into a troublesome situation. Zombies may not have any clever tactics, but they rely on their large numbers and can attack various security bases at regular intervals. Due to the requirement of the security base to resist intermittent attacks, the base had to send more people to participate in guarding the base, which seriously restricted the security base's actions to go out to clear zombies. In addition to the influence of some intelligent zombies, there are also many zombies hiding under command, which also caused trouble for the zombie eradication work. At night, I saw with my own eyes that several groups of zombies entered our community and nearby buildings to hide. I vaguely saw a few of them wearing military uniforms. However, fortunately, we did not relax our vigilance just because we saw hope, and the materials were distributed and used as before. This is why we did not fall into a bad situation when the elimination activities reached a stalemate. The government's elimination of zombies was carried out in a tense situation, but there was a lack of barriers between regions, and zombies from other places would still wander around the city without knowing it. Unknowingly, the weather was getting colder again. The zombie tide is back. According to the radio, an overly cold or overheated environment may cause the zombie virus to hibernate, so the zombies will migrate periodically. However, the return of the zombie tide also means that the elimination activities in this city may fall into a more difficult situation. At the beginning of November, we boiled a pot of hot bacon stewed with radish vermicelli, and I was looking at the novel whose pages I had turned. My mother took the radio as usual and wanted to listen for a while. But this time, the content coming from the radio was what I had dreamed about countless times in my dreams. The vaccine has been successfully developed. This human catastrophe is about to end. The radio kept replaying this content. My mother, Xiaoyang, and I looked at each other, and then I didn't know who shed tears first, and then I didn't know who covered their mouths and laughed silently. Crying and laughing, my mother seemed to want to vent all the fear and grievances accumulated over the past year. Although she didn't dare to speak, her eyes were swollen from crying. I was in a similar situation. My eyes were swollen, but my mouth was sore from laughing. Not long after the broadcast, helicopters flew over and sprayed medicine from the planes. For 3 consecutive days, the whole city was sprayed with medicine at a high intensity. I quietly observed the situation of the zombies. From the beginning, the movement became slower, and later some of them fell to the ground and would never get up again, and even began to rot as time went on. This time, it was really over. After another 7 days, there were only 1 or 2 zombies left, and they could barely maintain the ability to walk, but their speed was slower than that of a toddler. The second cleanup activity began. Finally, another team of soldiers came to our community. They drove a car, wearing protective clothing and carrying guns. 1 or 2 in the open space were quickly dealt with, and they began to search the corridor carefully again, and several gunshots were heard during the period. Then, they began to drag the bodies one by one to the central square. There were several barrels of gasoline placed there, ready to burn the bodies. I looked at Xiaoyang, and the mother next to him had already prepared the meal. Cured meat dumplings, stir-fried meat with small green vegetables grown at home, and boiled eggs. After packing them in plastic-sealed bags, we decided to use drones to deliver them to the soldiers. But we were not the only ones who had the same idea. So when they cleared the zombies, 2 drones hovered in front of them. As for the family that grabbed the supplies at the beginning of the apocalypse, they tied some food with ropes and let it down from the window. The soldiers were stunned. Although they refused again and again, the 3 of us were determined to send it, so they just threw the things out. In the end, the things were accepted. They saluted us with a straight posture, and then got in the car and rushed to the next location to carry out the clearing mission. The apocalypse is over. It was a beautiful morning when we came out of the house that day. There were only 3 of us left in the community. The little sister with colorful hair was smiling, and the other family was not as fierce as imagined. They supported the elderly in the family and led the 3 or 4-year-old children. They also greeted us gently. We laughed with each other, celebrating our survival and celebrating others. We all joined the volunteer team for post-disaster reconstruction. The nightmare days are over, and a new life will start again with our efforts. 10 extras. Ya is both lucky and unfortunate. She hates all social activities because she was bullied since she was a child. After she became an adult, she stayed at home and worked online. After her mother passed away, her father, who had remarried, did not want to take care of her, thinking that she would not starve to death as an adult. So she lived on her own. Because she lived in a high-rise apartment and she hated socializing, she preferred to buy all kinds of food online and store them at home. Except for throwing away the garbage, she could hardly leave the house. She also made her home look like a supermarket, with a wide variety of food. Sometimes there was no place to step, but this made her feel at ease. The end of the world came too. Suddenly. That day she had been playing games for others, and the task was urgent, so she was busy and exhausted. Because she was wearing headphones and concentrating, she did not even notice the turmoil at the beginning of the end of the world. It was not until the afternoon when she came to her senses from hunger that she realized the problem. Jiang Ya immediately took the inflatable swimming pool she bought online to collect water, as well as various tools at home that could hold water. Fortunately, because the community had always had power outages before, Jiang Ya was afraid of delaying her online orders, so she bought large batteries and solar panels. The solar panels are on the top floor, and she only needs to adjust the switch to continue using them after the power outage. However, because she was a tenant, the original landlord did not force her to join the owner group, so she was not exposed to the owner group at the beginning. However, after the Doomsday, there were survivors who killed and cannibalized people in her building. Seeing the residents opposite being killed by breaking into the cat's eye, Jiang Ya was so scared that she covered her mouth and even stopped breathing. But fortunately, the other party did not know her existence, and they seemed to be injured, so they did not intend to spend energy to check one by one, and only focused on the known survivors to rob. Later, the 2 terrible demons died, and Jiang Ya was completely relieved. Long after the end of the Doomsday, Jiang Ya felt scared when she recalled it. Zombies were secondary, and the 2 ogres were the existence that appeared in her dreams countless times. For this reason, she received a long period of psychological treatment before gradually returning to her previous life. He Jie's family was a nouveau riche. His father made a lot of money quickly, but his health soon deteriorated. Fortunately, He Jie was not a fool. He took over his father's business and made it prosperous. He also married his first love, a high school beauty, and had an eldest daughter and 2 twin sons, the second and third. The family had a good life. They even bought a house near the university town where the sons went to school after the start of the semester. But the end came. What's worse is that there is almost nothing to eat at home, but there are 7 people in the family: mother, Zhang Jie, wife Zhao Ying, eldest daughter Hu Qing, 2 sons Hu Jun and Hu Yao, and the daughter's child who is just 2 years old. Realizing that this is not going to work, He Jie and his wife Zhang Ying discussed it all night and decided to go out to find supplies. The eldest daughter had just divorced and had to take care of the child. He Jie wanted Zhang Ying to take care of his daughter and mother at home, and he would take his 2 sons to grab supplies. But Zhang Ying didn't want to, and the eldest daughter Hu Qing didn't want to either. Dad, if we don't have food, we will die if we stay. I'll go with you. One more person means more strength, Hu Qing said. Finally, the couple decided to go out with the children to find food. They gave all the remaining food in the house to their elderly mother, and Hu Qing coaxed the children to sleep, and they went out. They were lucky. After the first day of the zombie tide in the recent large-scale comprehensive supermarket, most people were turned into zombies, and most of the zombies chased the sound to attack the living people in other places. In the quiet comprehensive supermarket, there were much fewer zombies than outside. When the family was young and strong, they were not afraid of those slow-moving zombies before the Doomsday. His wife Zhang Ying was a little scared at first, but she got used to it after a while. She was so angry that she could even smash the zombie's head with a few hits when she swung the iron rod. They were even luckier because they found a truck full of goods on the side of the road, and the goods inside were basically food. Relying on this large truck, they went back and forth several times and transported a lot of supplies home. He Jie wanted to transport all the supplies back home, but Zhang Yi stopped him. It's the last trip anyway, so leave some things in the car, otherwise other people in the building might get jealous and cause trouble for us. Sun He Jun also agreed. While they come down to grab supplies, let's go back and hide. He Jie thought so too, left a few boxes of instant noodles and potato chips, blocked the truck at the door of the unit, and hurried home with his wife and children. A neighbor in the corridor came with a knife and wanted to rob them, but they were not afraid at all. After breaking the man's leg, other people who were eager to rob things also stopped. After returning home, they even used loudspeakers to attract zombies to block downstairs to prevent people from other buildings from running to this building to share a piece of the pie. Back home, they hugged each other to celebrate their survival. Okay, as long as we have these things, we don't have to be afraid. Hu Yao and Hu Jun were young and energetic, and they almost jumped up. But Hu Tie has been in the mall for so long that he has a strong sense of crisis. Okay, take a break, we'll move the supplies to the small room inside. Hu Tie said. The small room inside he mentioned is the secret of their survival. In fact, when they first bought a house, they bought 2 houses. Not opposite each other, but 2 adjacent houses in 2 units. There is only a wall between the 2 houses. After asking the property, they even knocked a door in the wall to connect them. On the one hand, it was to connect them, and on the other hand, it was to renovate both sides, build 2 new walls, and build a secret space in the middle of the 2 houses. But they couldn't predict the future. Building such a secret room is actually to store the safe at home. Important secrets in the company, including some important documents, and money are locked in the safe and put in this room. The 2 houses have been cleverly designed with secret doors. No matter which room people enter, they will only feel that the house seems a little narrow because there are too many things, but they can't imagine that a small space is actually built between the 2 houses. The supplies were packed into the hidden room to the ceiling. In addition, they also deliberately stored water to ensure water supply after the apocalypse. It turned out that the small room they renovated saved their families' lives. At the beginning of the apocalypse, because they carried supplies in and out of Unit 3, people soon began to search for their family. When someone tried to pry open their door, they had already expected it. They deliberately opened the inner door of the double-layer security door, so that after the outer door broke, they might have a chance to use the second door in the future. Then their family evacuated this room and moved to the hidden room and the next door in Unit 2 separated by a wall. By moving between the 2 houses, or occasionally staying in the hidden room in the middle, they not only avoided the sweep of the building, but even the robbers didn't find them. Later, when there were no survivors in both units, the second door they reserved finally played a role, and their activity space was also increased. In the end times, their family lived cautiously. But fortunately, this life was not so long that there was no hope. When everything was over, they felt as if they were in another world when they stepped out of the house. Really, is it over? His wife looked at him with tears in her eyes. It's over. Hu Jie answered.